together with Sima from Another Europe is Possible. Hi, Sima.
Hi, everyone. So good to be here.
Yeah, so we will be the moderators of today. And I just want to say that this event was organized by a whole group of European initiatives. There is Europe Calling, the School of Transnational Governments, Mehr Demokratie, Another Europe is Possible, Citizens Takeover Europe, European Alternatives, and then the Transnational European Assemblies. So we all came together and we asked ourselves, how can we bring Europe closer to the people? The European Union is such an important level of political decision-making, but for a lot of people, it feels very far away, very abstract and kind of disconnected. So the idea of today is to relate Europe to your daily lives and to strengthen a common European perspective between the people. Because at the end, we all live together in this European democracy. And in fact, this European democracy needs us, because no democracy can function when there is no civil society, no public sphere, no common discussions, and no common perspectives. So we decided that this year we want to make a series of events that puts the citizens, you, at the center. So tonight we didn't invite any experts to talk to us. You are the experts. And our aim is to create a dialogue between all of you that is about getting to know each other's perspectives better. And because every one of us knows that political discussions in these times can get heated very fast, we want to try out a new approach that is simply called speaking and listening. And this is where the experiment really starts. And I just want to say in advance, for us too, tonight will be a learning experience. And I hope you will forgive us if there will be some mistakes or confusions. We try our best to get this over in a productive way. But now let me explain how this new way of talking and listening to each other works. Research shows that for meaningful dialogue, we have to create an atmosphere of trust in which everybody feels safe and valued. So later, we will be splitting up into smaller groups of 5 people. And in these groups, everyone has his and her room to speak without getting interrupted by the others. That means that one person speaks for 4 minutes about his personal experience, his worries, his dreams, his fears concerning the topic of today. And the topic, as you all know, is the rising living costs all over Europe. So we are sure that every one of us has something to say about it, has own experiences and has friends or family that are affected by it. So we ask you to use your 4 minutes to speak about your personal experience and your perspective on that topic. The other people in the room are asked to listen carefully and empathically to the person who speaks. After one person is finished, the next person gets her or his 4 minutes. And we do this 2 rounds, so everybody can speak twice, and you also have the chance to relate to what you have heard from the others in your group before. And I know that might sound strange to some of you, or some of you are maybe even afraid of speaking for 4 minutes, but I can assure you that once you started, it will feel okay. So I would really be glad if you stick with us in this experiment tonight and just try it out and see how it makes you feel. So now that I filled you in on the approach, I want to just quickly give you an overview of the structure of the event tonight. Because before we go into the breakouts, we will have some inspirational inputs for you, and I'm really looking forward to this. We have inputs from 4 different countries to get you into a reflective mood by giving you some creative input regarding our topic of rising living costs. After that inspirational input, we go into the breakout rooms. I will later explain again how we do this. The breakout rooms will be in different languages, so you can choose your mother tongue. So you don't need to speak in English, you can speak in your preferred language. Then we will spend like almost 50 minutes together in the small breakout rooms, because you have 2 rounds of talking and another 15 minutes of free exchange. But we will send you always messages into your rooms, so you don't have to keep the time, we will do that for you. After the breakouts, we will come back together into the big space and we will have a final forum to share some spotlights of people's experiences from the groups. So, and that's the overview. I'm really excited, and I think now we can start our event, and I hand over to Seema for the inspirational input.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah, for that wonderful explanation of how this experiment is going to work today. So I'm Seema, and I'll be moderating this part of the webinar, where we'll be sharing some inspirational contributions from people across Europe about our experiences of the cost of living crisis, based on where we are, from where I'm based in the UK to Italy, Romania, and Germany. So I'll start off with my own contribution, which is a perspective from the UK. And of course, although we're no longer part of the European Union, we're still part of the broader European community. And many of us here, I'm sure, are very close and seek to maintain our friendships across the channel as well. And I myself and Another Europe is Possible has been campaigning in the past to remain in the European Union. And we do hope that soon, one day, we will be able to rejoin. Now, from my perspective in the UK, I live in London, and as I'm sure many of you know, the inflation rate in the UK has been much higher than some of the other countries in Europe. The rent prices, particularly in London, are extremely high. And I've actually just moved out of my previous house share because our landlord just put the rent up by £450, which is 20% of our total previous rent. The bills are doubling, even tripling, and lots of people are being evicted. There are high rates of homelessness. Recently, I had a neighbour who's a hospital cleaner, and they normally keep themselves to themselves. We didn't really see much of them. But after the huge rise in prices, they knocked on our door asking for £8 so they could buy food for their children. And that's the state that we're in the UK right now. Most of the people in the area that I live in come from minoritized, racialized, and migrant communities. And these communities are often suffering the hardest, as we're already living in a system where the legacies of colonialism continue, where people from the global south are recruited into a highly exploitative labor and work system, even after much of our wealth and resources were violently taken over centuries of empire. So as we're doing a creative experimental assembly today, I've written a poem to encapsulate some of this experience in the UK, which I'd like to share with you. It's called The People of Britain. The people of Britain. Clap for the NHS, they said, while we were dying in corridors, waiting for a bed. Eat out to help out, they proclaimed, while the queues for the food banks were our national shame. The Queen is dead. Long live the King. And they expected us all, black, white or brown, to sing. The blood-soaked history of empire erased. The monarchy has entered a new, modern phase. But no mixed-race daughter-in-laws, oh no, and keep the yachts, pomp and palaces, the people like a show. Of course, the people must pay while our bills reach the sky, but we must show deference. We must not question why. It's not our fault. It's the war on Ukraine. Everyone together must share this pain. Well, that's what the energy companies say. While they make record profits, we must look the other way. British Petroleum, 23 billion per year they're earning, selling oil and gas while the planet lies burning. It's not our fault, blame the immigrants, they say. They're taking your jobs, your housing, lowering your pay. We must close the borders, they said, looking on as the English Channel was filled, blood red. Get Brexit done was their constant refrain. It's not the bosses or the government, it's the EU to blame. Meanwhile, it's our labour these companies extract to make record profits while we break our backs. We stare wistfully across the channel at the continent we're detached from. And we see our friends in full revolt against the policies of Macron. Millions on the streets, they're setting things on fire. To connect our struggles, what does it require? To the profiteering companies, we loudly say no. From this point onwards, our movement must grow. We reach across the channel as comrades, as friends. Through Europe and the world, our movement must extend. Let's tear down the borders. Our movement is supranational. The nation state is a trap. Its boundaries aren't rational. In fact, in most places, they're downright colonial. But some of us here, we're really taking back control. With strikes in every sector, we've regained our soul. The nurses, the cleaners, the barristers, the teachers, the academics, the students, will throw off these leeches. Let's take back our power. The bills, don't pay. Join a union, go on strike. Don't look the other way. And that's the end of my poem. Thank you very much for listening. Our next contribution comes from Diletta Bellotti. Diletta is a political activist, researcher, and writer based in Italy. In 2019, she launched an awareness campaign to shed light on labor exploitation in agriculture by mafias in Italy. She has a weekly column about social movements on L'Espresso, and she is part of the writing collective Fango. I think actually Diletta will be speaking in Italian, so if you want to use the interpretation tab to set your interpretation language, that would be perfect. And now, over to you, Diletta.
Okay. Ciao a tutti e tutte.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me here tonight. I'd like to share not only my personal experience, but also the experience at a national level against the rising living costs. So Italy, first of all, is the only Western countries where salaries haven't been actually adapted to the current situation. It is also the only country in Europe where inflation is very high, and the energy and climate crisis has a huge impact on our country. It is also one of the few countries in Europe where we don't have a minimum salary. So all these elements gave us an idea of the current situation, and we need to fight against the cost of living crisis. And of course, we need to rethink our developing system, and we need to try to fight against the exploitation of natural resources that endangers not only our survival, but also other people's, and not only our species, but also the entire planet. So we can't pay the bills, we won't pay your wars, we won't pay your crisis. So goes the slogan of the We Don't Pay movement. I like, of course, to tell you more about it. On 30th November 2022, it ended a campaign that had the goal of reaching 1 million signatures for a bill strike, which was quite important in order to induce energy companies and government to take action against the energy price increase. Although the campaign failed to reach its goal, well, it did manage to reinforce an important narrative. Well, first of all, by showing the numbers related to the crisis in Italy. In Italy, almost 5 million people were unable to pay their bills, 3 million more than the previous year. Since December, after this We Don't Pay movement, we have decided to widen the scope. So not only the bills, but also food shopping, schools, health, housing. And from this decision, we decided to create working groups, and I'd like to tell you more about it later. Well, you probably know that the campaign was inspired by the English Don't Pay campaign, which was born in the spring of 2022, with similar reasons and a great success, albeit slow, as many other movements, of course, because we need to debunk certain myths. We need to provide a structural change and movement. we also know that our enemies are very well known. We're talking about multinational companies such as Shell, BP, Total Energies, Equinor, and Eni, which in the second quarter of 2022 registered profits for over $37 billion, profits that also derive from speculation on energy prices. Well, this problem, therefore, we need to make it quite clear. The fact that, you know, we see energy and living price increasing, well, is due to the fact that those who profit from war and energy crisis have been making so much money. And we're talking about crises that they themselves have helped to increase. We talk about a wealth that derives from the destruction of the planet, from self-fueled crises, from wars narrated in a certain way, and from the use of harmful resources. So this wealth is linked to this speculation on rents and on public spaces. In a country like Italy, where cities and well, the cities have a huge gentrification issue. Well, this is quite clear to us. That's why our movement works in squares and streets of Italy, tracing the links between survival, morality, and choice, and claims access to energy as an essential good. As in the United Kingdom, well, those who are part of the campaign actually self-reduce or suspend payment of their bills. This was a very important decision that I had to make, and many other people made as well, because we needed to do that. We were obliged to do that, and that's why we decided to build this movement. And I'd briefly like to mention an important topic, which is the one mentioned by Naomi Klein in her book Shock Economy in 2007. Well, she develops the concept of disaster capitalism. Well, the term is defined by two intertwined features. Well, first of all, disasters and crises are exploited as opportunities for profit. And secondly, disaster capitalism is the main framework through which influential actors within the capitalist system respond to crises, disasters, and catastrophes. So that's quite clear. They are the one, of course, responsible for these such disasters. And this process is not only morally reprehensible, but also allows us to identify and understand how capitalism reproduces the condition for expansions amidst the chronic disasters and crises it has created. So I thought that the disaster capitalism could be like a snake biting its own tail, because it shows how the movement works. Well, it engulfs everything, that even itself, forever. So as I said earlier, we decided to launch this new event, and we set up 4 working groups that have a main purpose, which is to reduce the price of the bills and the energy price in general. The first working group is dedicated to work and to wages and income. The second one is housing, schools, and health. The third one is energy and climate, and the fourth one, agriculture and food. We decided to act upon it because we know that we are all suffering, and especially given the recent decisions made by our government, we need to move forward. We need to do something in order to strengthen our ties and try to promote certain topics which we believe are very much important. For example, we are launching a new campaign for the minimum income. We know that, of course, there are many limitations. One of of them being providing a minimum income to all citizens, but we also want to bring a social wage, so something that could help all the citizens and that combines the right to work with the right to an income. So last but not least, I think that we can no longer talk about work without addressing the production model. We are all part of such production model. And of course, we can't talk about agriculture and food without realizing that some working conditions are very precarious, especially in our sector, in the agricultural sector and in Italy. In other countries, I know that there are similar issues, and I think that we can no longer talk about energy crisis without mentioning the climate crisis, and that we need to talk about health, because many people don't have a health access to the health system, nor the right to housing. So I think that we need to go beyond this problem and try to overcome fragmentation and try to mobilize ourselves to create new opportunities to move forward and to launch new campaigns and try to build a new society that we really need. And I think that we can't, we believe that we need a new reality, a new world, and a world which is free, especially more free than this one. Thank you very much for giving the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diletta, for a very, very informative speech on what's happening in Italy and for making that link with what's going on in the UK as well. It's so inspiring when I'm moving around, so going to France, going to Italy, and I hear people talk about what's going on in the UK and the Don't Pay movement. And it's so great that actually some of these transnational links are already being made in a natural way. So thank you so much, Diletta. Next up, we have from Romania a video of a protest against the rising cost of living by the local residents of Cluj, organized by Social Housing Now in collaboration with the socialist action group Gastavists Romania, Fridays for Future Romania, and the Syndicate of the Militant Students. This is a shorter version of the full-length video, which will be published on the European Alternatives website after this event. And I can see that the video is on the screen being shared, so over to you.
Ajungem de multe ori să nu ne mai putem duce copiii cu noi la cumpărături, de frica aia sau de gândirea care o avem că poate banii care îi dau astăzi pe 3 dulciuri, mâine le mai fac o oală de mâncare. Atâta de scumpe au ajuns toate lucrurile. La electrica toată lumea spune că noi nu plătim curent. Ei, uite că am o factură de 4.900, dacă e nevoie pot să-și arăt. Până la urmă plătim și curent acolo și plătim mult, mai mult decât ne-am fi așteptat acum în ultimul timp. Cei care veniți la acțiunile noastre știți că și cea de acum este o mișcare pentru dreptate locativă. Scumpirea costurilor traiului este un fenomen care se întâmplă în întreaga lume. Totuși, dacă ne uităm pe harta Europei, vedem că România este printre țările unde prețul la gazul natural și curent electric a crescut cel mai mult. Pe de altă parte, România este, din păcate, și continuă să fie țara sărăciei și țara forței de muncă ieftine. Acum, cei care au venituri mici și cei care și până acum au trăit în sărăcie suferă și mai mult. Dar azi, această criză multiplă afectează și persoanele cu venituri medii. Am ieșit în stradă pentru că ne revoltă cum s-a adăugat acum la criza veche a locuirii noua criză energetică. Clujul nu este scump de azi sau de ieri. De ani buni ne costă o avere să locuim în acest oraș devenit paradis imobiliar.
sectorul privat beneficiază de pe urma faptului că statul a liberalizat prețurile la energie.
Și ce ne mai recomandă companiile de energie? Să cumpărăm becuri economice, să închidem luminile, să schimbăm frigiderele, să fie un frigider clasa energetică A și mașina de spălat de asemenea. Trebuie să fii smart pe energie. Asta ne spune compania. Trebuie să adopți un comportament de consum nou. Stă în puterea ta să faci ceva. Asta auzim de la companiile de energie. Că e vina noastră pentru facturile mari, că e vina noastră pentru prețurile mari. Dar mai e ceva despre care nu prea vorbește nimeni critic. Când creșteau prețurile la benzină, Petrom făcea profit record. Pe primele 9 luni ale anului 2022, Petrom declara un profit de, țineți-vă bine, peste 9 miliarde de lei. De 5 ori mai mult decât anul trecut. Romgaz a făcut profit, deci încă o dată, vorbim de profit. Romgaz a făcut un profit de 3,2 miliarde de lei. Hidroelectrica, un profit de 3,5 miliarde de lei. Nuclear electrica, un profit de 1,9 miliarde de lei. Vă rugăm liniște, liniște, nu înțelegeți voi aceste cifre. Nu înțelegeți ce probleme grave întâmpină aceste companii serioase. E tot foarte, foarte complicat. E mult stres și multă tensiune. Ne străduim să vă oferim libertatea alegerii. Ziceți mersi. Dar cine plătește toate aceste profituri? Noi, bineînțeles. Odată le plătim direct lor, a doua oară prin subvențiile de stat, a treia oară prin creșterile la produsele de bază, mai ales la alimente. E cel mai mare jaf din istorie.
Pentru că nu putem să dăm foarte mult aici și oricum nu ne prea place electrica. Eu vreau doar să ne arunc o factură aici la gunoi.
O să vă rog să continuați cu...
A unui cetățean în sărăcie.
Domnul Zampi, haideți să ne punem mișcare, că vă gătați cu chestia.
Nu mai puțin.
O să ne dați cu chestia. Ne v-ați dat aici, pe cu
Tja, das heißt, die Rechnungen sind überall weggeworfen worden, habe ich so den Eindruck. Und jetzt haben wir nicht zuletzt noch einen Beitrag von Max aus Deutschland.
In Germany and how a small NGO helps people in dire need. Over to you, Max.
Thank you very much, Seema and Sarah, for this wonderful moderation. I would like to very briefly give you an idea about Germany. There's the NGO Sanktionsfrei, supporting people who are threatened in their very existence by cuts in their benefits. Sanktionsfrei supports people financially and legally, also against the arbitrariness of the state authorities. I'd like to read to you 3 Twitter threads from the founder of Sanktionsfrei, Helena Steinhaus, showing what they can do to quickly help people and unbureaucratically assist them. Without my children, I wouldn't have had a positive outlook on so many days. Just the fact that we had no electricity at home for 2 weeks and in the evening it was dark from 5, my children had no problem with it. But I just don't understand this justice, writes Mehr. And on top of everything, she has to deal with an electricity cutoff at the end of the year. Single parent in the dark. Sanktionsfrei was able to cover the shortfall as part of the electricity campaign. And you may say now that with children you cannot be cut off from electricity supply. Yes, it's true. Normally hardship rules apply. But the energy was cut off anyway, and the debt coverage from the job centre was refused. Klaus is homeless. He asked for a continuation of his citizens' income, and in January he gets the approval day by day. He has to show up at the job centre because he may be given a job on a daily basis, and then he'll be able to pick up a few euros. To find a new home for Klaus in his neighbourhood is almost impossible. Our lawyer is on it now. Nadine, a single parent with 2 children, was about to be cut off from her electricity supply because the job centre refused a loan for her electricity debt. She was supposed to pay it from her standard allowance. Countless people have that problem. She now has to pay 130 euros instead of 560 a month for electricity. It's the water heater, which is extremely expensive. Her rent has also increased. And this whole thing is getting me down psychologically, and I cry a lot, and I can't even celebrate Christmas with my children.
That's everything. That's the end of our section. So it's over to you, Sarah. Thank you.
Okay, so perfect. That was our try to give you some perspective from different countries in Europe and England. And we now want to put your perspectives into center. So now we do the thing that I described before. We're going to go into the breakout rooms, and always 5 people together will be in one room. And then we will do, as I explained before, I just quickly repeat it. So we will be in groups of 5 people. Everybody can choose their own language they want to speak in, because we have no interpreters for all the rooms because it's just too many rooms. So soon after I finished explaining, you will see a list of breakout rooms which are marked per language. So you just choose any room randomly, a room of your language of choice, and you go into it, and we will then distribute you, so you will at the end have 5 people in one room. Then when we are in the rooms, we start the experiment, which means that every one of you has the 4 minutes to talk. And I would just ask one person to be brave and start the first 4 minutes. And then we will send you always a remark that the next person's turn is on. And the first person who spoke just gives it over to the next person, just nominates the next person who speaks. And as I explained, we do this 2 rounds. And then at the end, we have a 15 minutes open discussions where you can just in your group speak how you want to and just have a normal discussion. So yeah, that's the plan, and we will try this out now. So the rooms will come up, and I'm just asking you to pick randomly one of the rooms in the language you want to speak in.
Okay, it looks to me like people have stopped joining now. So I think we're ready to go on to the next part of this webinar. I hope you all had a really fruitful discussion in the breakout rooms. I certainly did. It was really interesting to hear about some of the different things that people are doing in their local economies to respond to the cost of living crisis, things like creating local currencies to keep money in the community and things like that. And also, it was also quite sad to hear that we all do have very common struggles when it comes to things like turning on heating and dealing with bills and being able to afford food. So what we're going to do now in the next part of this webinar is do 3 rounds of questions, and we'll allow up to 5 people to respond to each question. And we hope that you can limit your response to about 1 minute so we can hear from as many people as possible. And the questions are going to be about how this exercise made you feel, but also the common experiences that you found, and also towards how we might empower ourselves based on this exercise. So let's go into the first question. The first question is, how did this format of dialogue make you feel, and what was different about it? So is there anyone who'd like to respond to that question? Please raise your hands. And we'll take 5 contributions. You can use the, there's a button, a reaction button at the bottom where you can raise your hand. Holger, let's go over to you first.
Yeah, thank you. It was very interesting to hear different stories from different people who deal in different ways with the rising costs. Some of them said they don't have too many problems and pass aid they receive on to people they consider more demanding. And on the other hand, we found out in our breakout session that many of the problems are basically political and made, not really have to be. Excuse my English. Thank you.
That completely makes sense. Thank you, Holger, and I love your background. The next person to raise their hand was Guido. Over to you, Guido.
Okay, well, it was really quite interesting to have discussions with different people from different European countries. In my group, we had 2 from the UK, 1 from Austria, and 2 from Germany. And actually, the problems are more or less the same all over Europe. At least that was my feeling. And we are all struggling a little bit with the impact that everyone has, and the problems that, for example, the big companies are, of course, making a lot of profit, especially the energy companies. And on the other hand, the people which do only have minimum income, that they are really heavily struggling with the income. Okay. And the format itself, it's really great. Thanks.
Thanks, Guido. And as Sarah's reminded us in the chat, you don't actually have to speak in English. If you want to speak in German or Italian, we have the interpreters here who can do that, and you can set the interpretation channel. If you go to More in the control panel, there's an interpretation button and you can choose your language. So the next person who raised their hand was, 1 second, I'm just opening the list. Thoralf. Thoralf, are you there?
Okay, ich muss mich ummachen.
Yes, I'm going to speak in German. Can you hear me?
You can hear, yes. So hear.
So I try to speak in German. In our group, we had people from Great Britain, Germany, and from Poland. We have not talked so much about how we are hit by the situation. I had the impression that we were not all that hard hit by it. And then we talked more about what the origins of this crisis are and what one should do against it. And then we also wondered, because there was somebody with us who lives in Italy, and he said, the question is, how can you empower yourselves as citizens? And that's what brought us to the idea that energy is so expensive, because the whole system is made by the companies, not by the citizens. And our idea was that maybe such issues should be more discussed and guided or steered at the local level. That's what we discussed mainly. I like the format a lot. I really like it. I have been to other discussions with other citizens, and I have to say, this format here is very, very beautiful. It's very nice to speak to other people, persons, real persons, which are not just the French or the Italians. I think it's really great, this format.
Thank you so much, Toralf. We can take 2 more contributions. The next person was Sieglinde, and the question was, how did this format of dialogue make you feel? What was different? Sieglinde.
Ja, also hier. Also was ich ganz toll finde ist, wenn man...
What I loved a lot was that there are people from the whole republic, and I liked also in these conferences that we have people from other countries here that create some sort of communality, even if the people don't sit next to you, even when it's online, there is still this feeling of common interests. And then we said we should act locally, buy local products at the local peasant. And we heard about problems among the participants in our group. Many of us were hard hit by the increase in prices. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing. The next person is Margaret.
Ja, okay. Ich habe ein ganz anderes Anliegen.
Yes, I have another concern. I sent the link to Zoom to 8 young people because I thought they should have understood that this is a topic that regards them, but not one of them participated. I checked it. So how can we reach more young people? This would be my question.
Thank you. That's a really important question. Thank you for that question. So the next question that I'm going to ask to the whole group, and to which we'll have 5 responses, so please feel free to raise your hand, especially if you haven't spoken, is what were your key common experiences and what did you learn from this? What were your key common experiences and what did you learn? Is there anyone who would like to answer that question? Please raise your hand, or you can indicate in the chat. Is there anyone who... Winnie, thank you. Over to you.
Ich habe in einigen Gruppen participiert.
Well, I was a guest in many groups here, and I noticed that the price increases, the price hikes are taken by many as God-given. They say, well, I'm in dire straits, but there is nothing we can do. Life is horrible. I exaggerate a little bit what was said, but that was the gist of it. So I think we all have to learn together that we are not victims, but actors, perpetrators. We ourselves, through our acts, have to show that we do not accept everything. We don't want to be victims. And this thought, I think, is something we should communicate to others. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Winnie. The next hand was from John.
Oh, yes. Clearly some kind of ontological crisis is occurring in Europe. I don't think Britain's withdrawal from the EU was the cause of it. There was something else going on. And certainly the hikes in fuel prices seem to be indicative of something. The war in Ukraine is indicative of something. Are we able to do anything about this? People in Britain are on strike regularly. There are strikes in France. I don't know what's happening in Germany. You have a social democratic government, but people are campaigning, are involved, and I think that's an important thing, that people are constructive about what they do and not destructive, that they still represent their political bodies, that they still keep trying. I think it's important that people still keep trying.
Francesco, if you want to go next, that's completely fine, even if we've had people from the same group. Thank you, John.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Thank you, John. Now, I was saying that in our group emerged a tension between basically we like the idea of Europe, even the UK-based people, but we feel a tension between the local community, tendency to solve the problem, especially environmental price problem, in a smaller community. But this goes against this bureaucratic structure of the huge European construct and the way that it talks to lower level, more local level of government. So I think this is very important issue that is prevents effective strategies from working.
Thanks so much, Francesco. So is there anybody else who'd like to share what the common experiences from your group were and what you learned? Felix.
Yep. So here I am. I was in the same group with John and Francesco. And I just experienced also now that people do not exactly answer the question you gave, which is quite interesting, because I think this is how democracy really works. That people follow their own thoughts, they build it into what they have experienced. And I very much like that. And that way you cannot predict the result. So I really like the format. I experienced it many times during COVID. I've talked to the whole world already, and it's lovely. Well, it's lovely to have small communities, and we are more or less all alike. More people who engage in such talks, even more than people right from the street, because I just came back from a climate meeting point where casual people come in, and we had a climate puzzle, and there were very loud people from outside Munich coming in, and we managed to tame them and take part. But, well, it was difficult. So it's different if people commit themselves. It's also an answer to, what was it, Vinny? People have to come themselves, by themselves. Doesn't work by do it and they do it. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Felix. We have time for one more on this question of what were your common experiences and what did you learn? Is there anyone else who'd like to answer this question? And if not, we can move to the next and final question, which I think is what people were naturally coming to in their responses to the second question. So the final question is, did this exchange empower you to want to start some kind of action in your community? And which kind of ideas came up? So I know some people have already addressed that question in their responses, but if there's anyone who'd like to specifically respond to that question, please feel free. Richard Wild.
Hi. Yeah, I mean, I I guess I brought this to the discussion rather than it came up organically from the discussion, but because that's the solution I've been reaching for through the pandemic, through Brexit, through austerity pre that, and through the cost of greed crisis post that. So it's basically just reaching out to other people, and I've just found myself part of a number of different networks now. So a local community, I set up a street group during the pandemic to support food banks and to look after elderly neighbours and such like. I'm a union. I was on strike before the pandemic, and now I'm co-chair of my union. So, and we're on strike now. I was on the picket line earlier today, and so I'm networking with my colleagues in the workplace. So I'm networking locally in the community. I'm networking with my colleagues when I go to work. And then also part of a network, a warn, which where we get an alert if there's an attempt to deport a migrant locally, and then we can all head there. And I'm also trying to network around environmental issues, but luckily I've got a friend who does that, and so I can kind of parasitically kind of network with her. But I guess the frustration is those need to synergize, because one person can only network so much. Yeah. So I guess that's what brought me here, because I live in the UK, but I'm half French, and I consider myself European. And post Brexit, I just feel really isolated. And I don't travel that much now because of the pandemic, and now because of the environment, I try not to take planes. So I'm just feeling really isolated, and at the same time seeing the commonality. The strikes are happening in France, the economic crisis in Italy, what's happening in Poland. There's commonalities, but I'd like to network at a European level. So.
Thank you so much, Richard, and solidarity to you on your strikes. Is there anyone else who'd like to answer that question? Did this exchange empower you to want to start some kind of action in your community? Which kind of ideas came up? We've had lots of great ideas from Richard with intersecting struggles as well. Is there anyone else who had any other ideas or thoughts that they'd like to share from their group? Please do raise your hand or indicate in the chat. Toralf? Go ahead. Toralf, can you hear me? I see you've raised your hand. Do you want to unmute?
Yeah. Okay, hört ihr mich? Okay.
Yep.
Can you hear me? Okay. Maybe I could add something. What sort of activities I would like to take up? Obviously, that all depends on the person. I feel very much revived by a debate like the one we've had, but whether I am the person who would take to the streets and become active in the streets, I doubt that very much, to be honest. But the dynamic that sort of propels me to such meetings as this one is the European idea. It was very important for me that it was a pan-European event. I think that we Europeans from the continent tend to claim and mourn that the European Commission, the European Union, that they all do what they want to do. But we allow them to do that, I think. So I think we as Germans and French and others should simply feel more responsible as a European. And I'm sure that that is quite difficult. But I believe that that would be the direction into which I would wish to work. Thanks.
Thank you, Toralf. Thank you. That's brilliant. Thank you for your contribution.
It's really not easy.
Yeah, it's very difficult, but it's great that we're all here from across Europe and from the UK. The next person who's raised their hand is Werner.
Ich versuche es auch mal auf Deutsch. Danke für die Übersetzung.
I'll also be speaking English. Thank you very much for the interpretation. We'll be speaking German, sorry. I don't really want to say much to the third question, but I'd like to go back to the first question, if you allow me. I realize that talking about money is difficult because it's a very private topic. You hesitate before you tell someone that you have very little money. For example, that you might be regarded as being poor and you actually admit to being poor. And I think that that is really difficult. That is something like an obstacle you have to overcome before you can actually become active. It'll probably take much more time to really develop the trust and confidence in a group or in a community to start something like that and to share something about your life which is really difficult for you. And yet I thought that it was really okay. I was expecting something different, but I thought that the exchange between those countries suffering the same way, more or less, was really very good. But I am very concerned about the hardship that was reported from so many different places. It does in a strange way also unite us. That's perhaps all from me. Thanks.
Thank you, Werner. The next person was H.J. Mosbach, and then we have Winnie.
Nur ganz kurz. Ich meine, das ist ja nicht so.
I'll be short. Let's not believe that we're the only ones suffering in Europe. Remember that in Somalia, people are suffering from thirst. In Iran, Iraq, in Syria, nobody really helps people suffering from earthquakes. And we have a very harsh situation that was reported about in Romania, and dumping builds or burning them. That is perhaps an action, an activity which would certainly be copied by others. You don't have to do it by yourself. Symbolically, you can throw your bills away. And I think you can do some grand publicity around it. And it raises the awareness also in Germany and France and other European countries, certainly, because it would also show very clearly that the problems are very much the same and shared. And I think that would be great if we could do something like that together and really move to that sort of activity in this circle. That's all from my side. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So important to remember what's going on outside of Europe as well. So important. Thank you. Winnie.
Ich möchte meinen Vorredner.
I would like to support what the speaker before me just said. We all know other people. And I'm sure that we're all members in some groups, associations, or parties, and we should actively support the idea, promote the idea of taking on activities. We really need to show the world that we are not naive and that we will not simply become victims of the wrongdoings of others and of their tactical games. And I think that that is something that we need to show the public at large. We could take to the streets and demonstrate. We could also do other things, of course. We could even bring charges against certain companies, for example, take them to court because they agree on prices and do other things which are illegal. That would be one possibility, but we really need to act. It's not enough to simply put the blame on someone. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Winnie. And that brings that round of questions to an end. And that also brings our final plenary to an end. So it was so lovely to hear from all of you. It was so great to be part of this experiment. And I will now pass on to Sarah, who will close our webinar for us. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Seema, you too. Yes, I was glad that we came back here now to have some final spotlights. I have to say, like, it was how I planned and how we planned it today, that we learned a lot, I guess, from this session. Maybe not everything worked out yet as we planned, and I was kind of, I found it nice what Werner was saying, that this was a first try. What we're actually aiming for is actually really to make politics still more personal. And when we go into the small groups and have exchanges about our experiences, I think Werner is right. It's hard for people to talk about the personal perspective on politics because we tend to externalize it and not see ourselves so much as part as part of all this entanglement around it. And I guess, Werner, I think it's not that we need to get to know each other before we can open up. I mean, that's what was we trying to create, is like this kind of safe space that makes people safe enough to open up even to totally unknown people. And we as an organization have tried this concept, and it's every time it's random people that don't know each other. And it really works if you create this safe space. That means everybody has the right to talk. Everybody has the 3 or 4 minutes to her or himself. And so that everybody really has to just fill the own room, but with their own personality. And I'm still glad that we did this today. I'm glad that you guys showed up and took the first step towards a new concept of getting engaged with each other. And for today, we finish it here, but I would love for you guys to come back and give us a second chance to even refine this concept and to try it again. And I will let you go now because it's already almost 9 o'clock. I think we all had a long, intensive evening. To me, I just want to say thank you to all the organizations who helped create this event. And I hope to see you soon and wish you a good night. Bye to everybody.
Goodbye.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Yes.
Grazie mille. Danke. Merci.
Thanks
Ciao.
a lot. Bye.
Vielen Dank. Tschüss.
Tschüss.
Well done. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
Goodbye. Thank you. Danke.
Vielen Dank auch von meiner Seite. Tschüss.
Sehr gerne. Bye.